What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another KINOMENTOR live stream. So, in this live stream tonight, what we'll be talking about is body and face rigging in Maya. So, this is a topic that's very interesting to a lot of people working in the animation industry because rigging and, in general, facial rigging and at large, rigging itself is a very difficult endeavor and requires a lot of attention to detail and technical aspects as well that work in tandem with aspects that are linked intricately with how your rig works for animators to be able to control it and create something that's stellar in terms of the animation itself. So all of these things at times might seem very complicated to achieve, and this is why today we'll have a look and a longer look at how this is achieved in Maya using a plugin that is free called Advanced Skeleton. It's in its version 5, so you can go and check it out. Now, if since this is live, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to chat along in the chat box. We'll try to address some of the questions you might have. If not, well, you're free to watch the whole live stream the way that it is. All right, without asking questions. That's also a good way to. All right, let's go now into here. I've set up for you. The here is Maya user interface open. That it's seen for everyone. So I just you to see the entire interface. Like this, so that you see the entire interface while we are working on this. Now, okay, so let's start. Um, what do I have here? Well, I have a full character that's been modeled and paying attention in detail to how the topology of the face is actually working, okay? Because you have to model in a certain way where your eyes here follow an edge loop and the corners of the mouth also follow an edge loop this way, so that if I continue selecting this, you can see it really follows in a circle, and that's what we call an edge loop. And the idea here is to have, why would you model this way with quads everywhere? Because quads deform nicely, okay? That's the idea of having quads in the modeling. No matter where you're clicking on the separate pieces of geometry, you would see that I have a nice and clean topology. And this is the first important step, because no matter how good your rig is, you know, you won't um, you won't have something that works if your geometry is not actually modeled in the proper way. You're setting up yourself to fail in your final outcome if the geometry is not done in the proper way. So that's the first thing I wanted to quickly talk about in this live stream, the geometry. Now, the other thing is also that when you're modeling, and it might happen that at times you have in your outline that are not properly named, and if they're not properly named, it's Now, how do you rename many things at once? Sometimes you will have groups, things that are merged together, and so on and so forth. So you'd like to have a clean file when you're starting out. So in order to clean file, best thing is to left click and select all of your geometry and then move it out of any groups by middle mouse, clicking on your middle mouse and releasing. So that way everything is any potential groups that are existing here while you. What might happen is that because of the way the nodes are connected, you might see something that's green like this, and that's when the shader for this specific geometry has been deleted, like I just did now. So that's not a problem. You can select the geometry and click and new shader, in this case Lambert, and it will be back like this, the way it should be. Now, when you have this, ideally you want to again select all of your geometry here, or you want to keyboard select all the geometry. And one cool little trick that I'm going to show you now is that you can go and rename all of these manually because you want to have them correctly named. Or what you can do is go in the top corner here and you will have an option that's the renamer here, Maya. And what this does is if I type, for example, KINOMENTOR, what happens is that it renames all of what I have selected here to be named KINOMENTOR. And that's one quick way to actually rename multiple geometries in Maya. Okay, now let's move on here. If, let me see, so if you are rigging stage here in your rigging tab that you open in Maya, what might happen is that you don't see advanced skeleton. So if you've downloaded, I'm not going to go through an entire tutorial on how to install the software, but if you have downloaded the software, you should put it somewhere that you know where it can be sourced anytime you open up Maya. In this case, I keep mine in the documents folder under Maya and your version of Maya, and you will have an install.mel file, and you just click and drag and drop it. And what happens is that in the top corner, you get, well, actually in your shelf, you get the icons for advanced skeleton. And then when you click on the icon 5 here, what you will get is you will get another set of menus that actually serve the purpose. Let me rearrange this. Okay, so what happens is you get it here, you get all the options that are linked to advanced skeleton. Now, let's get this started. Now, if you select all of the geometry here, you will open up the first tab that says preparation model, and you have an option that says clean. Now, what this does is that it creates a top level group. It's going to be called Geo. So once I click on that, it just took all of the geometry that I have and nice and neatly collected it under a single group called Geo. And then when you click clean, what this is going to do is it's going to clean your entire scene of any additional things that stayed behind and that were required maybe while you were modeling. And all of that gets cleaned up. And now what you get is all of the side views and the model in the center, and everything is cleaned up and ready to go, right? So once you've done that, you can close model and you can select rig. Now, what this prompts you in Advanced Skeleton is the ability to create your rig file and reference your model. So I'm not going to do this for the purpose of this live stream, but the idea behind this is to actually be able to, have your model, in a sense, and welcome back to another keynote ready for being changed. Now, that's the production way of working on things, is that you will have a model, and if it happens that you have, you know, some feedback from one of your supervisors, the modelers are going to work on that model, and actually what's going to happen is that they're going to add some details or whatever needs to be corrected, and then automatically that's going to pass through your final rig as well and update automatically. So this is why you would like to reference your geometry in a new scene to be able to add these details later on. But now that's not necessary for me here because I just want to show you how this works. The next thing you get prompted is certain options. Like for example, are you going to use this for game engine, see up access, mirror the translates? That's not too important now. So we're going to jump straight to the body. And the first option you get greeted with is the fit skeleton. Now, by default, you'll have a biped, a bird, a bug, whatever it is that you're working on. For us, it's a biped. So when we click import, what's going to happen is that you're going to get in the scene a certain biped, right? Click space, and this is what I get. Now, in terms of where it's located, well, it's located at the origin, and my model wasn't correctly put in the origin, okay? Now, what I can do, there's two options. I can either fit the skeleton to go to where my model is located, or the proper way of doing this might be to actually move geometry to where it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna the side view and click X on the keyboard, and I'm just going to make sure that I've snapped this here. And to be completely sure, I'm going to click D on my keyboard and then move the anchor point to the bottom of the model. So that way, if I start snapping with X, I can make sure that I'm snapping to the grid. And this way, I know that the model is at the correct origin. Now, another thing that can be done is that I can scale it down a bit and, have it roughly already in a position that by default is considered, let's say, a default for advanced skeleton. Now, the idea behind this is that scale is relative, as you probably know, right? It's not a question of if it works for advanced skeleton or not. The idea is here, for me, it's easier to show you guys by adapting it to how to fit advanced skeleton. But if you're using a game engine like Unreal, or if you're using any other thing to any other workflow that you might have and its own scale, right? Because scale, as I said, is relative. Then you can adapt the rig to be on that specific scale. Now, I'm not going to enter too much detail about what scale is, but now what I did do is I changed some of the options here that were set at 0 in terms of my group, my geo group. Now, what I can do is I can go under edit, delete by type, history, and I can go under modify and say freeze transformation. So whatever I moved here now, this is considered to be clean, and this is my starting point, okay? Now I'm going to keep it at that. Obviously, as I said, you can have that set up in this way, but it's not necessary to be like that. You can also freely move if you wanted to your skeleton and adapt it to whatever your workflow is. I just want to explain to you how quickly you can get to a working production rig with advanced skeleton. Okay, now when we have that, we want to edit it. So we will go on option here is called fit mode, right? So there's plenty of other options that you can change here. Like for example, the joint size, if you wanted to increase the joint size, you could increase it. It's not something that's required now, so I'm going to keep it at around. That's good for me now. And what I will do is I will now click on the fit mode here. And when I enter fit mode, what is important here is that what's going to do is it's going to update the local orientations, right, of the joints. Click on the um, question mark here, what it's going to tell you is that when fit mode is on, automatically when moving your joint, you will have all the parent joints auto orient to keep the x-axis down towards the bone, right, towards the next bone. Moving a joint in that insert mode, what it's going to do is it will auto orient both parent and itself. Moving that joint in an IK, for example, the elbow, it will update all the joints within the IK to an IK plane, and changing the thickness of a joint, for example, would update it to box and cylinder geometry, the cone to scale. Now, all of that's a bit of a lot of detail now, but what this essentially does is make sure that all of your joints are set up in a correct way. Now, whenever you're moving some joints, you want to be in fit mode. How do you know that you're in fit mode? Well, in the bottom here in the information bar in Maya, you will have an option that prompts you and says entered fit mode, right? And when you're in fit mode, what I like to do is I like to go under shading and say X-ray. So that way I still see my geometry, right? But I just you know, see through the geometry so I can arrange where the joints should be. Okay. Now, we'll start first with looking at roughly where the root should be, because obviously the root is the location that actually is going to drive most here. And then from there, I'm going to start adjusting the shoulder. So I'm going to do shoulder. And I like to, rotate like this, move things around in the exact spot where they're supposed to be. Here. And the good thing is that you're working on this on only one side. So once you've completed one side, you can just relax because it's going to be mirrored to the other side automatically when you run the script. Well, one more thing about we put music in the So what I'm doing is I'm arranging all the fingers to respective spots. You might want to also use an option here that's called wireframe on shaded, and you'd like to also look at roughly where your geometry that's being modeled is actually going to fold nicely. You see here there's a bit more edge loops and they're made so that they will better this exact spot. And one thing also that's pretty important to mention is that while working on this, go a bit faster, but when you're working on this, you want to take your time because making this work the way it's supposed to requires time. Now, if you noticed a couple of times now, selecting here was a bit difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use layers in Maya, and I'm just going to create from this geometry a new layer. But that way, what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to template this layer. Now I won't inadvertently select the geometry anymore, and you'll just be able to select your joints because the geometry is templated. Or in other words, locked in a layer. the time to be put in the correct location. And what you can notice also is that there is an update on the local rotation axis. As soon as you move things, you can see it here. It's actually moving and updating. So you know that you're in fit mode. And as I said, there's nothing to worry about if you think you were doing it right, but you realized somehow that it's not good at a certain point. Well, you can always come back and, do this. Recreate the rig. Now let's look at the face. What do we get? Well, we get the jaw that is supposed to be here. So I'm just going to quickly put it where it should be, because it's not essential now, considering that we will be rigging again the face. So these joints are not super important. Overall, I just want them to be in the proper place. The knee is somewhat where it's supposed to be, which is good. And then I have go end. So I'm going to move it a bit here, and yeah, I'm just going to go under shading, show, and remove all the polygons to see just what's going here. So the big toe, I don't need it, so I'm just going to delete it, and the pinky toe as well, delete it, because we are working with the model that has shoes, and when it has shoes, you don't really need the pinky toe to move. Okay, and now if we consider this overall, I think that it's properly set up. So this is done. I can click fit mode and exit fit mode, and close this down, go under build advanced skeleton. Now it's always a good idea to save this. Whatever the name of your file is, you can go on the okay. And this will save your file with the versioning that goes like 001. And it's always good, because if there is a mistake that happens in the plugin, you just want to be sure that you are able to come back to this and not redo everything. I'm going to click on build advanced skeleton, and what's going to happen is that automatically it's going to create the skeleton for us and mirror it on the other side, and create all the necessary control curves that are linked to this specific joints that you created. How about that? Just in less than 15-20 seconds, you got all the controls made for you, joints mirrored on the other side, properly named and everything. How cool is that, huh? How cool is that? I would say very cool. Now, when you have this, well, obviously you're not really done. There's still more work to be done in order to have something that's working. Okay, now let's see about this. We got all of this done. I just do this. Remove the polygons where the spine is going. Okay, that's okay. It's gonna work. Now the next step is to go into deform. So in deform, you're gonna have many different options: sub wrap, skin cage, skinning, and many different ways of skinning your model, depending on what you're doing. But in most cases, what you will be using is the deform number 2. So how does this work? Well, you select all of your geos. So I'm going to say show none, and I'm going to go under show polygons, and I'm going to select all of my geometry here, including the one that's templated. I'm going to template select it, and then what I'm going to say is I'm going to create the skin cage. Now what this does is that it creates a skin cage based on where your current joints are set up, okay, and it's going to add some skin weights on it, so it's going to already have that skinning. And what's going to happen is that now I'm going to select all of my geometry here. I'm going to enter into the outliner, go under geo and select all of the geometry to do it as well, and I'm going to say copy weights. And what this does is that it copies all of the weights from the skin cage onto your model. All right. Okay, so now that this is done, I can hide the skin cage. Things I have here, I'm going to go and remove the X-ray. I'm going to remove for a sec wireframe on shaded, and let's see what we have. If we start taking the root, for example, and moving it, you get some nice movement in your character. Curves that were used for the skin cage, right? And obviously, this is not perfect for now in terms of the skinning. But what happens is that you can start seeing that you're getting your character, giving actually your character the ability to move. And obviously, what happens here is that when he moves his arms up, you're going to see some deformation in geometry. And this is something that's inevitable. You cannot, no matter how good your geometry topology is, you cannot escape this. You will have to do something that's called paint skin weights, and that takes quite some time. But okay, we'll get to it. Let's go back to 0 here into of where we are in our default pose. And now what we're going to do when we're done with the default, we're going to go and paint a bit of weights. But before we do that, there are options in Advanced Skeleton that are located, for example, here, under Tools, okay? And what you have is an option in Advanced Skeleton to click on Animation Tester, say for the body. And what it's going to do is when you hit apply, it's going to apply some various twisting motion onto your rig with keyframes. And this is going to show you potentially the locations of where your rig could benefit of some additional work, right? In this case, that would be how to paint better skin weights for the deformations. And it's going to run through all of the possible places where, including fingers and everything, in order to give you an animation so that you don't have to put manually your model into a certain position and try to figure out if it's working or not, right? So when you scrub through your timeline here, you'll start to see all of these keyframes, and you can, be the judge of if you're happy with how things are looking and forming, or if you're not happy with that. Most of the times, these are the areas that are problematic. It's when the arm is lifting and also the elbow area loses in that deformation. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, if you don't need this, you can say remove body animation, and just with one click, everything is gone, right? There is also another option called Walk Designer, and when you click Start, what's going to happen is that you don't see it here because it's in another window for me. Uh, but when you click start, it's going to apply an animation to your model, and that animation will be, for example, of him walking, and you will be able to change, the positions in terms of if you want him to run, if you want him to be just walking normally, and so on, right? Now, I just have a normal walk, and you need to be prepared that this is not going to look fantastic in terms of the animation. It's just applying, something that's default. But in terms of that, you can immediately see where you have some mistakes in your skin weight, right? And you can see, for example, that what's going on here is that around the neck area, there's a lot of crumpling, and that might not work. So immediately you start to see that there are some problems. Now, you can say cancel and close when you see that around the pants here also there is a problem. But ideally, what you want to do is you really want to spend some time working out on, working on all the weights for each of your geometry, and to be able to refine it so that way when your model deforms, it deforms well and correctly. If I were to do that, it would take a very long time, but I just want to show you, for example, the problematic areas so that you have an idea of how that works. Now, if I select the shoulder, for example, and pull it up, this position like this, we know that when I rotate the shoulder, this wouldn't necessarily look like this, right? You would have the shirt not break this. I'm just going to go under show, isolate, view selected, so that we just see this area. And now let's work on it. What we're going to do is we're going to go under skin. So you're going to switch your tab from filling, rigging, and you will go in paint skin weight tool. Okay, and now what happens is that you get something that looks like this. Okay, and what this is actually showing you the areas of influence. And this is where a specific joint is being influenced by or actually is influencing this geometry. Now, whatever is white means that it has a very strong influence, and whatever is gray means that it's having less of an influence, and whatever is black means it has absolutely no influence at all. Okay, so let me just quickly here have a 1 minute break to be able to set this up in a way that you can see the paint skin weight tool as well while this slide on. I'll be right back. we're back and supposed to so that you see the entire interface. So I'm just going to go back to this shirt. And from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go rigging and under skin, paint skin weight tool. This is where the tool appears. And in this tool, pretty in a simple way, you have all of the joints from the root all the way to all of the joints of the spine and the neck, in this case, that are influenced this specific piece of geometry. And obviously, you don't really want to have some hard edges like this. You want to blend it a bit more. So you can select smooth under the paint operations and just paint it out to be a bit smoother and going joint by joint. What's happening, because by default, you're not going to have anything that works well. So you'll have to spend some time here figuring out you're gonna smoother. The those areas that smooth like this, and then you start to see, pretty rough areas like this. And when you start smoothing things up, you the geometry to place where it's supposed to be. Go back to the thematic this area and click the add button of the influence and go back to smooth and then smoothen things out. And what you want to look at here is to not have a huge distortion of your geometry. You want your quads to be evenly distributed. Be adding and smoothing things up until with in terms of how these are set up now. The quads, you can hold B on your keyboard, the brush smaller so that you can obviously earlier something that takes quite a bit of time to get right exactly to where you want it to be. So trick here, moving things around just by looking at this and say that, okay, I have some geometry that's protruding from here. I can always, click on H, hide it. But I'm just looking at this geometry now and the way that it's forming, right? Imagine that waving. I think this works way better than what we have, for example, on the right side. The form it is here by default, and how the deformation looks here once you worked on it while painting your skin weights. And yeah, I'm going to go back under display, show all. curves page as well. Really need it right now. And yeah, so now the geometry here, the way that it's modeled is that, it's not stopping exactly where the end of the geometry is. Like, let's say it's not modeled all the way up until here, and then, there is no other geometry underneath because it's not seen. So why is this done in such a way? Well, because you might have some additional shirts, you might have him shirtless. I don't know. So the geometry is still there. Now we will go under skin, paint skin weights. And again, what you will see is I'm going to start to smooth things out, go under, just show the selected. And ideally, yeah, again, the process, looking at how this should be deforming and working on it. There is no other way. So there is simply, um, for all of you that thought there's going to be a complete automated version of, oh, I don't have to work and I'm just going to make this, click one button and it's going to look great. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you because this is actually the step that's going to take quite some time to get right, uh, simply because, yeah, it takes time. I'm going to change the area of influence of the joint here. I'm going to go and see what's going on with the shoulder area. Right. Smoothen it. That's the area of influence. And then the entire thing, what's going on. And from there, I'm just going to see what happens when I go down or when I go up. And this is how you should be, working on, never in isolation for a specific thing. It's an iterative process and taking into account all of the geometry that you have on your character. So if it happens that you move things around too much and you don't know where your build pose is anymore, you can always open up Advanced Skeleton and under the publish here you have go to build pose, and when you click that, it brings back your model in its build pose. Now, another area of problem is this area here. And this area is when you're bending your arm, you're kind of like, looks more kind of like a hose. So the idea is that here, when this is bent, you're not going to have something that looks like this. Look at your own arm when it's bending, you still have things in there. It doesn't create a hole like this. So ideally, what you want to do here is to bring back some shape. And once you're at this stage, how do you do it? Question. And the way that you do it is that you go under pose, corrective shapes. Now, the way that this works is that you bring the rotation of your specific joint here to a position that's going to be rotated in when your animator is rotating. And have that to done angling the rotation, you select the geometry, say create corrective shape. What's going to tell you, it's going to say, okay, the elbow is rotated at this angle under X, Y, and Z. Okay, you click OK, and then what it prompts you is it enters into sculpt mode, selecting only the geometry that you've selected. And what it does is that it will help you shape this specific area. Okay. Now, this might be intuitive or not really intuitive for you. I don't know. If you don't want to use the sculpt mode, you can jump into vertex and use B on your keyboard to kind of like, you know, select a larger area, and you can start moving your vertices the way that you see fit, the way that you think this should look like when the elbow is bent. And obviously, again, this is something that, while it's done live, is a bit tricky because it take a bit of time and focusing to get this exactly right. But I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. You guys don't stay there staring at what I'm doing forever. I don't want to do that. Play more interesting things to do in your life than actually staring at this tutorial. But since you're there, and since you guys following this tutorial, simple and that is to like and subscribe, like and click the bell icon. Just click it to get notified when the second part of live stream will be online. You know you want to do it, so please subscribe. It will help the channel a lot. Now, okay, I've got this in a spot that I'm happy with. I can go under, say here, for example, modeling and say surfaces, and go under the sculpt geometry tool and select the smooth, and then this a bit, just that, like that. Okay, let's consider I'm happy with it. Now, once you're happy with this, you're going to hit, and it's going to compute the delta shape that is required and give you something that's not. It gave me the exact opposite for some reason. While the shape is in 0, that's obviously a bug that shouldn't be happening. But have a look at this. While it's bent here, you can see that it's bending the correct way, leaving not a lot of shape here, and it's more natural in terms of how the skin would bend in this specific area compared to, let's compare it to this. So I'm just going to show the geometry. Polygons. See how this looks weird and kind of like really realistic compared to this. This looks way more realistic than this area here. And then you need to pay attention to these details and work out on your entire model that way with the corrective shapes if you want to make your model work exactly the way it's supposed to and deform correctly. And only once you've went through the painstaking trouble of painting all of your weights, and only then, before, only then, you're deemed worthy to do the facial rigging. Before that, don't even bother. Okay? So, a couple other things and areas that might be problematic are the fingers. So let's say, for example, if I don't show the, I don't show, and I'm going to curl the index, obviously what happens like this. And because the geometry is so close, you will have to go in so close to each other and so close to the other joints that you will have to go in and make sure that you manually paint. See, the thumb is working well, has no issues, but all the rest is acting weird because of that. So you need to paint the skin weights there. Another area that's potentially problem is also around the knee here. See how the knee is bent and it wouldn't naturally have a big weird shape here that looks like this to be a bit natural in real life. So you want to make sure that it doesn't look like that. Obviously, around the middle part here, there is some um, problem with the quads here being pulled by this leg, and this should be fixed also around the center area of the hip. But yeah, those are the problematic areas that you should focus on, right? And once you've focused on these, you will be able to move along. Be nice because I've smoothened things working. Another part here is that the jaw, the bottom jaw, that's acting kind of weird because now it's not sure if it should follow the jaw or the head joint. But again, this is not crucial now because you're going to redo all of that part when you work on your facial rig. Now I'm going to go on the build pose and see what happens here. I get this big bicep bug that happened. And this is why I mentioned you should always save your file in increments so that if something like this happens, you will be able to go back and fix your problem. Alternatively, you might end up with a file that's unworkable anymore if you just keep on saving on top of the same file always. Now, was there one more thing that I wanted to mention? Yes, there is. When you finalize your rig here and you've painted all of your skin weights, right, and you're happy with how everything moves, you need to just make sure that your rig is easily selectable, right? Now, in this specific case here, this fell back here. And if you have any problem with a specific control curve not being in the correct place, you can always select it, go under show and say isolate view selected. Right click on your mouse and select all of the control, all of the curve points. So show you is this. You're going to select this, the reason. So okay, and the idea was basically, I'm not sure why it's not working now, but the idea was to select this and to be able to move the control vertex in a spot that works better for your specific rig. Let's say that you've selected this and you wanted it to be a bit more in front as well to be able to select the torso from the front if your animator wanted to do so. Well, that would be also very handy to move it. But the way you do it is you left click, control vertex, you select your vertices and you move them in the correct spot. That would be that. But I don't know, I'm not entirely sure what's going on with my scene now. Might be linked with this bug that I had here. So yeah, but in all, this would be concluding how to do your body rig in Maya. I'm gonna go ahead and paint the skin weights in their proper positions. And the next time we go live, you will be able to see how it all works when it's nicely done, and we will be able to work on the facial rigging. Until then, there is just one thing I'd like you to do, and I'm sure you know what it is, and that is to like and subscribe to the channel. It will help a lot, and hit that bell icon to be notified when the next live stream for the facial rigging in Maya comes live. Until then, take care, be good, stay frosty, whatever you want to call it, and I'll see you in the next cut.